Ladies and gentlemen, I do not intend to make a long speech, but essentially to contextualize the BPO sector within the wider Fijian economy and what are some of the critical issues that we need to be able to understand, in particular those who want to invest in this sector, those who are coming from outside Fiji, and indeed Fijians themselves. I think fundamentally, many people have said to us in the past that the reason why they want to invest in Fiji is apparently we all speak English, which we all do. We have neutral accents. People can understand us a lot better. You don't have to spend millions of dollars as they do with some of the nationalities of other countries where they have to get them to change their accents, so some Brit or Yank or Aussie or Kiwi can understand us. Our infrastructure connectivity is good, and we're in the right time zone. And we have a well-qualified workforce. But that is not the only thing that we should be actually looking at. We need to look at the wider context. As highlighted by Shagufta, there are other more critical, what we call basic infrastructure requirements. That's important. Connectivity to, of course, a submarine cable is critically important. We have the Southern Cross cable that lands at Rifle Range in Vatuanga. We've recently built a pipe off the cable that came from Samoa to connect to Vatuanga. We acquired a World Bank loan funding to build that pipe, which has landed in Savu-Savu, which essentially has meant that Vanuatu now is going to be very well connected. It was already well connected. TFL is going to launch a fiber optic cable project from Lambasa to Senganga, then of course on to Savu-Savu, which means that Vanuatu is now also a site for BPO business and offices, and we encourage that. We like to keep the people of Vanuatu in Vanuatu. We like to send people from Vitilevu to Vanuatu. There's a lot of real estate there, so your cost of business actually comes down significantly. So that's sort of what we call the strategic thinking behind it. Linked to that, of course, as you would have heard in the budget that was recently announced, we've allocated $1 million to land a second submarine cable, but on the west coast of Vitilevu, because we need to build redundancy. What happened in Tonga some months back essentially put Tonga out of connectivity for over a week, if not more. Even when we tried to call people on the satellite phone, it's very hard to get hold of them during that couple of weeks. We cannot have that happen to us, not just from a national perspective, but also from a business attractive perspective. If BPO or Outsource Fiji is going to go and try and get customers or businesses to move to Fiji, they will look at things like redundancy. So they will ask if there's going to be a volcano somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and the Southern Cross cable gets blown out of water, literally, then do you have a backup? So if you have a backup, which is a second submarine cable, landing on the other side of Vitilevu, you are able to then be able to market yourself a lot better. That's critically important. In the same way with electricity. We have, of course, we are currently, as announced by government, we're working with EFL to have a redundancy line. Monosavu supplies about 60 to 65% of all of electricity demands on Vitilevu. If there is a dry spell, the water level in Monosavu goes down. We are more heavily dependent on fossil fuel, burning more, heavy diesel, which means your cost of production goes up. Which also means that when there's also a cyclone, and you have that one line that comes from Monosavu, down to Vunda in Lautoka, your electricity connectivity goes. Now, to actually have a redundancy will cost literally hundreds of millions of dollars, which we have to invest in. We are currently, as you know, EFL has recently, 44% of it has been acquired by a company called Seven Pacific PT Limited, which is a consortium between Chugoko, which is a Japanese electricity company, and JIBIC, which is the Japanese International Bank of Corporation Bank. Now, Chugoko has a fantastic footprint in terms of the adoption of new technology, in particular in renewable energy. So we are looking at standalone systems using more renewable energy even for the national grid, which again brings down your cost of production. There's initial upfront capital investment that's required, but overall it reduces our dependency on fossil fuels, which is another side issue to that. We need to, as a BPO community, as a country that's going to market itself, and indeed companies that will set up in Fiji, you need to have an edge over others. And one of the edges could be, in a growing world, a world that's growing to become a lot more climate sensitive and a lot more focused on reducing a carbon footprint, that you have your BPO and your carbon footprint is actually quite significantly low, or indeed, hopefully, carbon neutral by 2050. So if your source of electricity in running your BPO center is coming from renewable energy, then obviously you have a much better marketing capacity and ability. So it's not just about the cost of electricity, but it's also ability to market. In the same way, in the tourism sector, a lot more people get attracted to come and stay at your resort if they think that you have carbon neutral, capacity. So that also gives us an edge. I think the other fundamental infrastructure requirement, obviously, is in terms of connectivity with roads, bridges, jetties, etc., because you will have people who work in the industry. We want people who work in the industry to also be happy. We don't want sweatshops. We want people where we have adherence to international standards, international laws. It also means that we'd like people to have social mobility. So if they are able to travel from longer distances easily, where they have actually a home that they own, then it creates a lot more conducive work environment. So case in point, as announced in the budget again, that we're planning to build a road cutting across Vitilevu between Nandi, connecting Nandi to Suva, or somewhere between Nandi and Lautoka connecting to Suva. Now, which means a lot more people can live further out, but actually travel to Suva or travel more to Nandi. But the cost of the land for them to build a house actually becomes a lot more significantly lower. When you have a lot of people fighting for the same space, the cost supply demand issue means the price of the land will go up. So it becomes prohibitive for many people to actually own their own home. These matters are critically important. In the same way, as highlighted, that Mustafa highlighted that a lot of the people who work in the BPO sector are women. So businesses need to be aware of matters such as domestic violence, of sexual harassment laws. These are critically important, because if you do not have a stake in that space, the people who are working for you, they won't necessarily be productive the next day at work if they're being bashed up the night before. So people need to understand this. In the same way we're providing, I see the CEO of FDB here. They have started, there are very few statutory organizations that's creating spaces for, in particular, women to be able to have the workplace a lot more conducive. So, whether it's nursery care, whether it's in terms of providing spaces for them, if people are breastfeeding, those things need to be taken into account, because that again gives you the ability to be able to market your product, market Fiji as a destination. I'm talking about the overall big infrastructure issues, both in hard infrastructure and also soft infrastructure. I think the other point that I wanted to highlight also was in respect of, stability in policies. The ability of BPO, Outsource Fiji, Outsource Fiji to go out and market itself, it needs to know that there's going to be stability in policies. We have taken a very, wider definition in terms of, for example, what is ICT business. And, you've got people from FRCS later on talking, and I don't want to sort of get into their space. But, ICT business now includes software development, call centers, customer contact centers, engineering and design, research development, animation, content and creation, distance learning, market research, travel services, finance, accounting services, human resource services, legal services, compliance, risk services, and other administrative matters. Coupled with that, I see the subject of your discussions today is about infrastructure. Similarly, we have very attractive tax incentives where you can get tax holidays up to 20 years. Not because you're running a BPO business, but because you built infrastructure that will provide BPO businesses to be able to set up. So I hope the Outsource Fiji and the BPO Council itself overall, and together with FRCS, will be able to attract predominantly local investors to invest in that space. There are many investors who want to be able to get a rate of return on their investments, and that's a very attractive way. So any profits they generate is completely exempt, as long as they rent out 90% of that particular infrastructure to the BPO sector. If they carry out, for example, strata title, so you may have businesses from overseas, they may want to come and buy space, and they, divide that along on strata basis. They, again, any profits generated from that is also tax exempt. So we've thought on a sort of long-term basis, because we need to leapfrog into the BPO sector. One other area that's critically important is investment in training, investment in education. We don't simply want businesses to come to Fiji and have all the senior management, for the next 20, 30 years, be all expatriates. Because even the expatriate companies themselves don't want that, because it also increases their cost of running their business. So if we are able to partner with Fiji National University, and obviously the government is the complete financier of Fiji National University, that's the space which is providing also a lot of vocational training and technical skill sets, that we need the Outsource Fiji and the BPO Council overall to be able to partner with FNU and to provide that upskilling. It's not just simply running a 4-week certificate course, but also a 3-year degree program in management of BPO centers, in management of those types of businesses. So that's also critically important to ensure that we have that long-term perspective. Sometimes when new industries take place, as we saw in the garment industry, when Fiji had market access to the US market, we had something like 22,000 women predominantly working in the garment industry in Fiji. And they were literally sweatshops. You had easy market access. The moment the market access dried up, it dropped significantly to about 2,000 or 3,000 people. But there's no large-scale investment in the human resources in that particular sector. We came along and we had a strategy in terms of developing the textile and clothing and footwear industry, the garment industry, and today we have something like 8,000 to 9,000 people employed in the garment industry, predominantly women, where we have remodeled ourselves as opposed to making 1 million pieces of one particular shirt. We are now making 200 pieces of a private school uniform, or some Victorian police services, or we had before the COVID, but now it's obviously starting again. The finals are to be played in some rugby league competition in UK or somewhere else. They have a special jersey which is made in Fiji, then it's flown across and it gets there on time. So it's that creating that niche opportunity and where we actually have a lot more higher returns for businesses here and also for those people who actually work in that sector. So I think I just wanted to highlight those issues to you to ensure that we get a sort of bigger picture. Of course, Shagufta forgot to mention, we've allocated $600,000 to Outsource Fiji. We tripled. The previous time we actually allocated $200,000. We've allocated $600,000. So Outsource Fiji needs to be also responsive to its members. We have seen, and to be frank here, we've seen many organizations that have been created, looking after particular industries. They kind of become very exclusive. They don't necessarily adopt new ideas. Some people tend to be pushed to the periphery. You cannot afford to do that in the BPO sector. You need to be continuously reaching out to new customers, to your existing members, and also to be able to partner with government, because we most certainly are very, very much see the future of this sector as providing lots of jobs in Fiji. One other area that I think you have to be mindful of course, is the preference in the professional, I should put it the other way, the professional preferences are changing in countries like Australia and New Zealand. A lot of Aussies and Kiwis don't want to work in certain sectors, and they see countries like Fiji as a source of filling in that gap. And of course, a lot of people in Fiji and many other countries see Australia and New Zealand as a land of milk and honey. Completely different, not necessarily all the time, land of milk and honey. There was an article recently that about New Zealand required something like 62 to 64,000 people in the hospitality sector. Certain restaurants cannot open full time, or they only open once a day or a few days a week. There's not enough people as waiters and waitresses. There's not enough chefs. Australia is offering jobs for chefs, offering 80 to 120,000 Australian dollars for chefs who have worked for more than 3 years. Recently, I was in Australia, and I went to a aged care, healthcare facility, private healthcare one. Every single person working there was a foreigner. From Afghanistan, from Thailand, from Indonesia, from every other single country except from Australia. We have seen people in Fiji now, and some of them are very well qualified in other areas, wanting to go and work in the aged care services. So what does that mean for this sector? Are you going to lose people? There are people who are going into the hospitality sector in Australia and New Zealand. Recently we were told that 60 accountants were taken up by accounting firms in Australia because there's a shortage of accountants in Australia. What does that mean for the BPO sector, in particular for businesses that want to provide accounting services from Fiji? We are lucky in the sense that we have a lot of accounting graduates. Because a lot of people like to do accounting in Fiji. So one may argue and say we have a bit of a glut. But what about other professions? We are also lucky in the sense that 70% of our entire population is below the age of 40, 65% below the age of 35. So we have a lot of young people. But we also must ensure that they want to stay in Fiji, that they want to provide services from Fiji. So how do we do that? From a government perspective, of course, we need to ensure that we have, proper infrastructure. People don't feel just because they live outside of Suva, there's not going to be any street lights. The roads need to be good. You need to ensure that water and electricity is there. One key area, of course, is medical facilities. We've partnered up with Aspen Medical from Australia, where they will very soon start having open heart surgeries, etc., so people don't have to go overseas for those services. Our internet connectivity is very good, as highlighted by the Honourable Minister for Commerce and Trade. 95% of the Fijians have access to mobile phone connectivity. From the cable that we built off the pipe that connected Samoa to Rifle Range, we had some residual monies that were left. We ran the project really well, so we had about $1.3, $1.4 million. So this is the other end of the spectrum. There are schools that did not have any internet connectivity, none whatsoever. So we connected something like 40 schools, of which about 10 were health centers, with internet connectivity. Villages that weren't connected at all. So what we did was there's a village nearby to the school, we Wi-Fi'd the school compound, so the villagers could actually come there and sit in the school compound and access Viber and WhatsApp and Google and get the Walesi app and watch the game, whether it's the game played in South Africa or wherever. So we need to ensure also, from a government perspective, that whilst we have this BPO growing, we have to ensure we bring in more Fijians into that space, and the only way we can do that is to bridge the digital divide, because digitalization and digital connectivity is great, but if you don't have some people connected, it becomes the greatest disequalizer. And for us, that's critically important. The PS for communications is here. We have about over 200 sites that have been now gazetted where there is absolutely no mobile phone connectivity. So 90 of that in this financial year will now get mobile phone connectivity. We've now got infrastructure sharing. Before, the model was Vodafone put up a tower and you could only use Vodafone services. The idea now is we put up a tower where Vodafone and Digicel can put up their towers and anybody, their dishes or receivers, and anybody else can do the same too. So for us, that's critically important. We have also, in respect of, before I round off, from government services, for businesses that intend to come to Fiji, we've got the Biz Portal Fiji. This year's budget, we're allocating close to $9 million or so so that in about 18 to 20 months' time, something like in excess of 15 to 18 regulatory agencies will become, all the approvals will become available online. You'll be able to track that. So it becomes a lot more attractive for businesses. They can make the applications from offshore. So less physical intervention, but also it creates a lot more transparency, and a lot more sort of immediacy in terms of responsiveness, and also you'll be able to track exactly what is happening. In the last session of Parliament, we launched a motion where government has moved that Fiji ratify the Budapest Convention. Now, the Budapest Convention is the only international convention, international agreement that deals with cybersecurity. So if people are, for example, going to have a lot of data living in Fiji or available in Fiji, or people having access to that, they need to also feel confident that the laws pertaining to, for example, cybersecurity, laws pertaining to, for example, data protection, laws pertaining to privacy do exist in Fiji. They don't simply just exist in Fiji, but they are in fact enforceable. And I think that's critically important. So please, I mean, one of the things that we have found that when we have these public discussions about such matters, many businesses tend to have a hands-off approach because they don't necessarily think strategically. They don't necessarily think, oh yes, cybersecurity is important because it will affect my business. It affects my ability to go and market myself. In the same way, laws pertaining to labor laws pertaining to privacy, laws pertaining to data protection. We have through the governor's team, we'll have a national payment system very soon in place by next year. Again, all of this is creating, and I don't like using this phrase, but ease of doing business, which has become a dirty word with the way it was run previously by the World Bank. But your ability to be able to have business processes expedited and having a lot more transparency, we're in a very different space altogether. And I think you'll see Fiji, as far as these matters that I've highlighted, at least in the next 18 to 22 months, be in a completely different space. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to provide that type of input for your discussions later on during the day. Today, unfortunately, I won't be able to stay for the entire period of time. But I'd like to wish everybody all the best for the discussions today. Please be, open and frank about some of the issues that you believe you have. There's enormous potential, has been highlighted by many. There's been, I think, some projection that we can create about 100,000 jobs in Fiji in the next 10 years. It'd be wonderful. In the same way as ANZ is predicting we'll have a growth rate of 23%. I hope ANZ is right. But I think there's a lot of potential. But you cannot have that stymied by not thinking long term. Sometimes business opportunities may come up, we can become quite greedy about it, and when I say greedy about it, meaning we don't think long term. If you invest long term, if you think long term, you become a lot more strategic about it, then that particular industry becomes a lot more sustainable, and indeed you can have a lot of what we call deep growth in that particular sector. I'd like to thank Outsource, keep on saying BPO Council, but BPO Council and Outsource Fiji for the invitation, and we look forward to partnering with all of you, and indeed all the future partners that will be developed through this particular sector. Vinaka, thank you.